Hello, everyone. This is James Song here. Welcome back to the TOEFL show. As you can see, I have a blank screen up right now, which means I'm going to do some note-taking for a listening passage. So we are doing lecture listening passage today. So please get ready to take some notes with me when I play the lecture listening passage right now. Because more practice you do, you will improve quicker. And it's a lot better you actually try to do note-taking with me live. And then you can make some correction when I explain my notes, sentence by sentence, word for word. Okay? So are you ready to take some notes? Okay, here comes a lecture passage. Let's take some notes, guys. Here we go.
Listen to part of a lecture in a history class. The professor has been discussing Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Egyptian hieroglyphs are the ancient Egyptian writings found in ancient Egypt on walls, monuments, and on the inside and outside of temples. Hieroglyphic writing ended abruptly about 1600 years ago, and it mystified the most brilliant minds in the study of Egyptian artifacts and archaeology for many, many centuries. Finally, the possibility of deciphering hieroglyphs came about with the discovery in 1799 of the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is arguably the most famous archaeological artifact ever discovered. It contains the same exact text written in 3 different alphabets: Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphic. But we didn't even know at first that the 3 texts on the Rosetta Stone contain the same information, and 2 of the 3 alphabets are ancient Egyptian scripts that stopped being used, the hieroglyphic and the Demotic. The Demotic script found on the Rosetta Stone, Demotic was not as elaborate as hieroglyphic writing. It was used for more mundane matters, like administrative documents. These ancient Egyptian scripts were replaced by Coptic script. But eventually the Arabic language replaced Coptic, and this cut off the linguistic link between ancient and modern Egypt. Now, the Rosetta Stone was remarkable because, as I said, on it was the same text in 3 different alphabets: Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphic. The stone was essentially the dictionary that scholars needed to interpret the meaning of the hieroglyphs, and it took a uniquely equipped researcher to finally decipher and understand what was written on the stone. Thomas Young, an English scholar, was the first to seriously attempt to decipher the symbols on the Rosetta Stone. He suspected, rightly, that the hieroglyphs were phonetic symbols, that they represented sounds rather than pictures. Until then, all scholars assumed that hieroglyphs were pictographs, that they symbolized objects or concepts. Thomas Young focused his attention on one set of hieroglyphs that he thought would probably spell out a single word, the name of a king or queen. He guessed that the symbols represented the name of the early Egyptian ruler Ptolemy, since Ptolemy was also written in Greek on the stone and was indeed a Greek name. And Young did actually prove that these hieroglyphs represented sounds rather than whole words. Strangely, though, he gave in to the dominant thesis of the day that hieroglyphs were pictographs. He actually dismissed his own findings as an anomaly because the Ptolemaic dynasty was Greek, not Egyptian. In other words, he figured it was an exception to the rule. It was phonetic because it was Greek, not Egyptian. How else could an Egyptian depict a Greek name other than spell it out? And that brings us to the hero of our story, Jean-François Champollion. Champollion built on Young's work, showing that different hieroglyphs spelled the names of kings or queens like Alexander or Cleopatra. But his critics noted that these were still not traditional Egyptian names. He hadn't done any more than Young had been able to do, so he couldn't disprove the dominant theory. Then, in 1822, Champollion was shown a set of hieroglyphs that contained traditional Egyptian names. The first two of these symbols were unknown, but Champollion knew that the repeated hieroglyph to the far right symbolized an S sound. He then drew on his linguistic knowledge to arrive at the solution to the problem. You see, unlike any of the other scholars who had tried to crack the code, Champollion happened to be fluent in Coptic. He wondered, and this was the real breakthrough, if Coptic was the language symbolized by the hieroglyphs on the Rosetta Stone. And if so, then perhaps that first disc-shaped symbol might represent the sun. And the Coptic word for sun is Ra. See where this is headed? So if the symbol were Coptic, the first symbol would be Ra, and then an unknown symbol followed by a double S sound. Was this, Champollion wondered, the name Ramses? He was eventually able to confirm that it was. So, he had figured it out. Hieroglyphs were mainly phonetic, they represented sounds, not pictures, and the underlying language was Coptic. A lot of work remained, but Champollion had cracked the code.
All right, how was it? Was a little hard, I think. Okay, it wasn't easy, even for any other TOEFL lecture passages. I don't think it was impossible. I mean, after hearing my explanation, which I'll give you right now, you'll feel a lot more comfortable and confident, I promise you. But level of difficulty, let's say if we have level of difficulty low, medium, high for lecture passage, probably this one is definitely high, or at least in between medium to high. Okay, so how did you go? Did you get everything down? Do you get a good understanding for the whole thing? All right, so next step, I'll go through the notes I have taken right now live. I'll go through it sentence by sentence to help you understand this passage as whole. All right, let's continue. Okay, guys, let's go through the notes. So Egyptian hieroglyph is ancient Egyptian writing. It was used for walls and temples and places like that. Probably very decorative writing system they used to decorate. And hieroglyph suddenly ended, disappeared about 1600 years ago. Okay, this is wrong spelling. K is short for thousand, so sometimes I use it. So I wrote 16,000 years ago, but I remember now, I'm sorry. You said hieroglyphy suddenly ended from around 1600 years ago. Okay, that's what the listening said exactly. So sorry about that. And there was a chance to decipher, means like break the code, to understand this code, hieroglyphic writing, 1799, by discovery of Rosetta Stone. Okay, so for archaeologists, the language was not being able to understand or decipher from 1600 years ago. So it kind of disappeared, or nobody understands this hieroglyphic writing. Okay, but the world now got the chance again to recover the ability to decipher and understand hieroglyph by discovering artifacts called Rosetta Stone, 1799. Okay, let's find out why. So Rosetta Stone is probably one of the most famous archaeological artifacts ever because it has text written in 3 different writing alphabets, okay? Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphs. And these messages has same meaning in different writing, in different language, in different alphabets, but meaning is the same information in different alphabets. But when we just discovered Rosetta Stone, we didn't know that. We didn't know these 3 alphabets mean the same information. We didn't know that. So this is quite a important information because think about it, okay? If we knew they represent exactly same information, then if we know Greek, then maybe we can decipher hieroglyph, okay? Because it must be the same information, okay? So this is important, but the fact is we didn't know this, okay? It was just text in 3 different languages, and we cannot decipher, understand hieroglyph, okay? But we want to. How do we do this, okay? And it continues by, there were 2 ancient Egyptian writing that disappeared. We can no longer decipher or understand. Okay, so we know one already. So one of these is Egyptian writing, just like hieroglyphs that we cannot understand, right? So 2 of 3 were ancient Egyptian writing, Demotic and hieroglyphs, and these 2 suddenly ended. Nobody knows what they are. We cannot understand these 2 writings, okay? And both of them are ancient Egyptian writing that ended. So to explain Demotic, it was not elaborate as hieroglyphs. So hieroglyphs were used, I didn't write it down, but it was like rare archaeological artifacts, you know? Hieroglyphs were ancient Egyptian writing used in walls and temples. So it was a very decorative writing, okay? But Demotic wasn't elaborate. So it was very mundane, means mundane here means very common, maybe boring, maybe very simple, static, okay? Like everyday stuff, common. So Demotic writing was perhaps used as administration document back in the day, all right? And the Demotic was replaced by Coptic writing, Coptic language, name of writing. And then Coptic was later replaced by Arabic. Because of that, so this means Arabic and Demotic did not have any link, language link, writing link. So these 2 had link, okay? Because it evolved to Coptic, it was replaced by Coptic. And Coptic and Arabic had some links because Coptic became Arabic. But unfortunately, there was no link between Demotic and Arabic. So because there was no link, the ancient Egyptian writing, Demotic and hieroglyphs, and modern Egyptian writing, these 2 connection was ended forever. Okay? All right. And then professor says something like, so Rosetta Stone can become like a dictionary, is a dictionary for hieroglyphs because it has Demotic, which is also ancient Egyptian writing, and another language. And it had a same meaning, right? So we can use Rosetta Stone, hopefully, to understand hieroglyphs. But it's pity like how we didn't know the three texts in different writing, in different alphabets, in different languages, had same information, right? If we knew this, then we would have been able to decipher hieroglyph pretty much straight away if you knew the Greek writing, right? So that's a pity. But anyway, so how do we find this out? So first, English scholar that made a real good attempt, try to decipher hieroglyph was a scholar named Thomas Young. How? He realized hieroglyph is phonetic sound, like an English alphabet, represent the sound rather than symbol or concept, okay? So he learned that, he realized this, it was not a pictogram, right? And this was a conventional norm. Other scholars, the dominant belief was that hieroglyph was a pictogram, was not phonic, okay? So Thomas Young was right. So he thought some of the hieroglyphic writing on Rosetta Stone represents a name of king or queen, okay? So for example, he thought it represented early Egyptian ruler named Ptolemy, okay? But the problem was Ptolemy was a Greek, and it was a Greek name. It was not traditional Egyptian name. So, although he was right, sadly, surprisingly, he gave up to the conventional norm. He dropped his own theory and said, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not right. As conventional norm says, add majority and dominant. Other scholars claim maybe they're right and I'm wrong. Maybe hieroglyph is a pictogram because Ptolemy that I'm trying to prove with a name is not an Egyptian name. It's a Greek name. So maybe it was just one exception that I got it right. But because it's one exception, because it was a Greek name, because it was like a foreign name to Egyptian, they made it as a phonic, like spelling. But as other people say, the norm is a pictogram. It's not phonic. It was phonic only in this case to represent the Greek name. So maybe I'm not right. Maybe it was only one exception. And he gave in. So professor is very disappointed that and surprised that he gave in to the norm, although professor hints that he was actually right. Okay. All right. And professor says, this brings us a real hero of the day. So this guy actually proves it. Okay. Thomas Young almost did, but he kind of gave up himself. Okay. Maybe what I proved was just one exceptional case. Maybe you guys are right. Okay. But here comes a hero. So this guy probably settles it. Okay. Proves it. Jean-Francois Champollier. I mean, obviously you can see I don't speak French. I don't know French. I'm really bad at it. So what I heard was Jean-Francois Champollier, something like that. So I just wrote it down in an initial. And Champollier, whatever his name is, this French guy, okay? He also claimed that hieroglyphs, just like Thomas Young, it represents the spelling of the name of king and queen, like Alexander and Cleopatra. Okay, so same direction as Thomas Young. It represents the name of a king or a queen, and it's like an alphabet. It's a phonic. It's sound driven. It's not a pictogram. But still, it was not anything more than Thomas Young, right? So he could not totally disprove the current norm was wrong. And another thing is, it was not traditional Egyptian name. It was Alexander or Cleopatra. It was a Greek name. So his claim is nothing different to Thomas Young. So he is stuck in there. He is stopped there. So maybe professor is implying if Champollier was proving traditional Egyptian name as a phonic sound, then Champollier will be able to prove this. But he was only raising the case with the Greek name, and this is no different to Thomas Young. So hopefully he can prove this with Egyptian name. Let's find out. 1822, Champollier was dealing with traditional Egyptian name this time on Rosetta Stone, not a Greek name. So hopefully this is it. All right. So he's saying like beginning two symbols. It's unknown. We don't know this. But he thought the later on the right two symbols represent S sound because he believes hieroglyph is a phonic. It's like an alphabet representing sound. He thought on the right two symbols were S sounds, maybe. Why did he think this? Because unlike other scholars, Champollier was fluent in Coptic writing, Coptic language. What is Coptic? Let's go up. Coptic was writing that replaced Demotic, right? Here we go. Coptic writing is a writing that replaced Demotic. So you could say Demotic, ancient Egyptian writing, just like hieroglyphs, changed into Coptic. So it's related to Demotic, ancient Egyptian writing. And then Coptic later changed into or evolved to Arabic, right? So is one of the, it's related to Demotic. So it's related to the ancient Egyptian writing, okay? So since he was fluent in Coptic, that is related to Demotic, which is also ancient Egyptian writing, just like hieroglyphs, he thought the symbol, so first symbol that we didn't know, represented the sun. And if it represented the sun, in Coptic language, it is Ra. Okay? So maybe Coptic is a pictogram. Okay? So in Coptic, it represents the sun. So he thought, because Coptic is related to Demotic, And if the Demotic and hieroglyphs are both ancient Egyptian language, and if the hieroglyphs is a phonic language, phonic sound, not pictogram, and in Coptic, maybe Coptic is a pictogram, although professor doesn't tell us this directly, because in the lecture, professor said the first symbol, so it's a picture, pictogram, in Coptic is sun. It represents the sun. And if hieroglyphic is a phonic to make sound of Coptic, that he knew in Coptic, sun is Ra. So maybe in hieroglyphic, he was guessing first symbol is representing Ra. Okay? And then on the right of the Rosetta Stone, he recognized two symbols represents S sound. He knew this. Okay? So maybe this hieroglyphic writing, the phonics, the alphabet, is representing name Ramses, something like that. Okay, Ra, Ramses. Okay? And it turned out it is right. It is representing Ramsey in phonic language. Okay? So he figured this out. So he found out two important things, three important things, I guess. First, he cracked the code. He was the first scholar to be able to decipher and understand hieroglyphic writing in 1600 years. Huge achievement. He cracked the code and he confirmed hieroglyphic was a phonic and sound alphabet, was not pictogram. And lastly, hieroglyphic writing language underlying base language, base alphabet is Coptic, okay, and Demotic. Okay, so Demotic maybe is a lot older than hieroglyph because Demotic is the base and it became Coptic, and hieroglyph is based on Coptic. Understood? Clear? 100%? Okay. So yeah, was hard. Was hard, but I hope you realize it's not impossible. And by listening to my lecture, although you may not have got this perfectly first time you tried, now I hope with my explanation, you understood everything, what I explained at least, then you can practice and you can view this video multiple times and ultimately understand everything in the passage. And after that is up to you. After that is how many times you practice, 5 times or 10 times, listening to the same page, same passage again and again, and writing notes real time again and again, pretending you're doing for the first time, which will help you note-taking skills and help your listening skills and understanding listening passage also. Okay? So that's all I can do. I've done it all. And now we'll move on to the questions and solve all the questions. Let's go, guys. All right. Final chapter is questions. Of course, we need to get every question right. Okay? All right. So I have questions on the left and our note-taking on our right. So hopefully we can find all the answers from our beautiful notes. All right, here we go. Question 23. What is a lecture mainly about? So this question, obviously, main idea question. Okay, So we need to get the main idea of the whole passage, not just the important point of a particular paragraph, but all of the passage. Okay? Main idea. The history of language in ancient Egypt, definitely not mentioned. The process that was used to create hieroglyphic writing? No. Okay? Process maybe it was used to decipher hieroglyphic writing by using Rosetta Stone, something like that. So if you chose A, we need to know all the information of how hieroglyphic writing was born and how demotic writing was born. So definitely not mentioned. And B, we need history of how hieroglyphic writing was created from day one. But our listening passage starts at when hieroglyphic writing was suddenly ended. So definitely not how it started, not at all. C, competition between two scholars to solve an archaeological puzzle. So do we have like Thomas Young competing against Jean-Francois Champollion? All right. So Thomas Young does this, Champollion does that, and two scholars are competing with each other. And ultimately, Champollion won, something like that? Not at all. No competition. So Thomas Young kind of started the process well and recognized that hieroglyph was indeed phonic, the sound alphabet, not pictogram. And Champollion kind of carry on, okay, what Thomas Young started, okay? So D better be the answer, otherwise I'll be in trouble. The circumstances, so surrounding or situations that led to the solution of an archaeological puzzle. So archaeological puzzle here is referring to hieroglyphic writing on Rosetta Stone. And Champollion indeed offered a solution to decipher certain hieroglyphic writing. Okay, crack the code. And the circumstances surrounding that led to Champollion's success of deciphering this hieroglyphic writing on Rosetta Stone. Perfect. Move on. So question 23, the answer is D. Question 24, what was demotic script used for? What was it used for in ancient Egypt? So detailed question. So detailed question is like a good test question to test your note-taking skills. So although sometimes detailed question asks you some kind of little minor detail, not like super major detail. If you want to get the full score, absolutely perfect score, maybe that's the level of detail you want to write your notes to, okay? To get every question right. Or you need to remember some things that you may not have written down. One of two, right? I prefer the former, okay? So let's check whether I have written this down. So demotic was not as elaborate as hieroglyphic writing. So it was like more mundane here. Okay. It was used for administrative document. Okay. So this is hieroglyphic. Here we go. Bang. Right here. See? I have the answer written down. Okay. Although it's a little minor, right? So maybe if you just written down up to mundane, or even if you didn't have anything down, then you just have to remember that hieroglyphic writing was A, was C, and D is not mentioned at all. I don't think C was mentioned either. A was mentioned in like first sentence of our listening passage. So hieroglyphic was very elaborated, okay, almost like an artwork kind of writing, whereas demotic was more common, mundane, such as used for administrative document. Okay, cool. Question 24, the answer is B, and it is right here. Feels good, doesn't it? Right here in our notes. Next question, please. All right. Question 25. Why was ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic writing was difficult for scholars to interpret? Okay, most fundamental reason, first of all, beginning of the passage, because hieroglyphic writing all of a sudden ended, disappeared, ended, meaning if writing is ended, what does it mean? It means it's no longer used. Okay, right? So nobody lives 1600 years, so nobody could pass on their knowledge to the next generation. Okay, so this is the most fundamental answer, because it's ended, meaning no longer used. And also because of that, they also says here, just like demotic writing, which was also another ancient Egyptian writing, like hieroglyphs, it evolved, changed, replaced to Coptic, and it replaced again to Arabic. And unfortunately, when it was replaced by Arabic, the link between ancient Egyptian language and modern Egyptian language, the link has been ended, destroyed. There's no longer linked. You cannot find the link anymore. Okay? So A, the language that it was based on was no longer used. Right here. This one right here. Word for word. Okay? Hieroglyphic was suddenly ended 1600 years ago. And also, it is a bit more sophisticated, advanced question. Very good question that you may think you might just get the answer from right here. But at the end of the passage, what did it say? Underline means base. What is a base language of hieroglyph? Which is older, demotic or hieroglyph? It wasn't mentioned directly, but it was mentioned indirectly, because it said hieroglyphic writings underlying language was Coptic. And Coptic is a language that replaced demotic. So demotic is an underlying language of Coptic. So demotic is even older than Coptic. Coptic replaced demotic, right? And if hieroglyphs was based on Coptic, then it is based on Demotic. Okay? All right? But Coptic or Demotic are also no longer used because it's changed to Arabic and the link has been ended forever. Okay? So first, hieroglyph ended, but also the language it was based on is same as underlying. So Coptic and Demotic also disappear. No more links. Okay? So A is the perfect answer. And answer comes from not only here, you're lucky guess if you got the answer from here, but actually here and more importantly comes from here. Okay? That's the perfect way to solve this question. All right? Question 25, A. All right. Question 26. What is the professor's opinion about Thomas Young's word with hieroglyphs? So professor was a little disappointed, not disappointed at Thomas Young, but disappointed at the situation where Thomas Young got this right, that hieroglyph is phonic and sound, not pictogram. Thomas Young got this right, but he kind of gave up on his opinion, although he was right. Okay, so professor was a little surprised, okay, a little saddened by how Thomas Young gave up on his accomplishment, although Thomas Young was right. Okay. So that is, let's find it from the notes to be perfect. Okay, let's go through. Thomas Young was first English scholar to really make a attempt. He realized it was phonic, not pictogram, and he tried to prove this by Ptolemy, who was an Egyptian ruler, and it proved to be right. Thomas Young was right, but because it was a Greek name, he kind of gave in to the norm of the day that hieroglyph was a pictogram, right? He kind of accepted that although he got it right, maybe it is just an exception because he is dealing with Greek name, not traditional Egyptian name. Okay, so professor was very surprised by that. Okay, I remember that. Sorry, it's kind of a little cheating. I didn't write that down, but I clearly remember the tone of professor's voice and what professor said, that, you know, she was really surprised, like why and how Thomas Young gave in to the norm of the day rather than persisting his own opinion, because Thomas Young was right. Okay. She feels that Young has not received the credit he deserves. Maybe, but this may be right, but I'm going to put triangle here because this is implied. It's not very direct. Like, she didn't mention this, like, oh, it's pity that although Champollion gets all the credit, since Thomas Young got it right, hieroglyph is phonic writing, and Thomas Young got this right before Champollion. So actually Thomas Young should get some credit. You know, she doesn't say that. So I'm going to put a triangle here just in case. It's very implied, indirect conclusion we're going to make. She's amazed that Young's conclusion about hieroglyph was correct. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, worse than A. It's still triangle, or I'm feeling B is wrong, because amazed means like, wow, unbelievable. I cannot believe how he got that right. That's amazing. That's what B is saying. And professor is not saying that at all. C, she is surprised that Young did not recognize his own accomplishment. I think C is the answer. Okay? So what professor says exactly is, she's surprised. I cannot believe, I don't know why Thomas Young gave in to the norm of the day, although he got this right. Because what professor's saying here directly is that Thomas Young did not know exactly he got it right, and norm of the day was wrong, right? Because if Thomas Young knew he was right 100%, then he wouldn't have given in his opinion, gave up on his opinion, right? So professor is a little surprised by that, right? Like, why would he give in? Meaning, if he knew he was right, then, he would have just persisted, but he didn't. So obviously that means Thomas Young didn't know exactly what he has found out. Thomas Young didn't know exactly he got it right 100%, right? So she's a little surprised by that. Okay. D, she thinks that Young's work was not careful enough, not detailed enough, not good enough to be taken seriously. Totally out of the context. Even worse than A and B. B and D pretty much really strongly wrong. A is also wrong. Now we look at it, because A is like really overly inferenced, overly implied as an answer. And C is just right, although this question is an inference question. So you do need to make an inference to get this right. And C is the right inference. A is not. Okay? So if you want the backup facts from the notes, it's from here. Okay? All right. All right, question 26. The answer is C. Okay, question 27. According to professor, what led to the decoding of Rosetta Stone? Champollion also realizing hieroglyph is phonic, and Champollion's knowledge of Coptic. Okay? And if that was a symbol of sun, then hieroglyphs is a phonic sound, and sun in Coptic is Ra. So that got this right. Okay? And also both Thomas Young and Champollion, both. Champollion, in this case, okay, that wanted to prove this thought he could prove this as hieroglyph was a letter, was a alphabet representing the name, okay, of king or queen, right? Greek name or traditional Egyptian name, okay? Ramsey, right? And before that, Alexander, Cleopatra, and before that, Thomas Young, Ptolemy, right? It was name of king and queen. Let's look at the answer choices. A, hieroglyph that represent the alphabet phonic sound of the name of a person. Yeah, that's kind of true, right? So ultimately, Ramsey, and before that, Alexander, Cleopatra, and with the Thomas Young, even Ptolemy, right? A is kind of right, okay? B, a written and oral description of historical event. Good. So it's just totally wrong. It's just not mentioned. I don't know what B is talking about at all. So thank you. C, the realization that each hieroglyph represented a different object or concept. Thank you. This means what? Hieroglyph is a pictogram. This is really clear. This is really important part of the passage, that hieroglyphic writing was not a pictogram that represent a concept or object, but it is a phonic alphabet that represent the sound of a word. Okay? So C is clearly opposite to the answer. So C is wrong. Thank you. B and C, totally wrong. D, the discovery that the word sun, Ra, wow, maybe D is the answer. Oof. So this is going to be a difficult question, I think, question 27. So the passage was pretty difficult. So the test maker, ETS, if they really wanted to, they could have made one or two really difficult questions with this passage. I think this is it. Okay. So 27, the discovery that the word sun, Ra, is written the same way in Greek demotic hieroglyphic. Wow. This is a good trick. This is a good question. Good quality, hard question. Okay? Only thing that is wrong is from here until here is painfully confusing. It's kind of right, but the discovery that the word sun is written the same way in Greek demotic hieroglyphic. Okay, take a step back. Take a deep breath, breathe in, breath out, and think about this. Does this sentence from here make sense or not? It does not make sense. If it's written in the same way, it's the same language, it's the same alphabet, written the same way? No, meaning the same way, means the same, means same information. This is nonsense, nonsensical. Written the same way in Greek, demotic, hieroglyphic. Then it's the same language. What are you talking about? Wow. So this is a difficult question, yeah? So ETS has really put in a lot of effort to confuse the student to hopefully choose D by just reading the answer choice until here. Wow, I got this note. Yes, this is exactly the most important point. Ra. Sun for Coptic is Ra. So if you make a sound, then it's a Ra. D is the answer. No, okay? You have to be really careful and read till the end of the answer choice. You have to read the whole sentence of the answer. Then you can realize this is nonsense. It doesn't even make sense. I cannot even comprehend this sentence, okay? How can this be written same way? It's a different language. It's written differently, but it means the same. Okay. And also, if you're really advanced students, at the end, we can figure out, although professor doesn't tell us directly, that Coptic is, it wasn't Demotic that Champollion used, but the Coptic that Champollion explained about is a little pictogram. It was a symbol. So he said it was a symbol in Coptic for sun. So if we read it out with a sound as a hieroglyphic, then it could be Ra, right? So Coptic was a symbol. And anyway, I'm sorry, I'm dragging on. The D does not make sense, as I explained already 3 times or even 5 times maybe. I'm sorry to confuse you guys. So, wow, they really tried to trick us, okay? So let's confirm by reading A one more time. Hieroglyph that represent the name of a person as a sound alphabet that led to decoding of Rosetta Stone. And also, we can confirm A is right because B, C, D now are all clearly wrong. Okay? So A is exactly right. And I already explained it. So, okay? Question 27, the answer is A. All right, guys. The last question. Question 28. How did Young's and Champollion's studies of hieroglyphs differ from the earlier studies of hieroglyphic writing? Very good question. I hope it's not as tricky as question 27, but this is a good question because it is asking the most important detail about this passage. It's trying to test whether the students understand the most important part or not. What separates Thomas Young and Champollion from the rest of the scholars, as you know, is that Champollion and Thomas Young recognized hieroglyph was a phonic alphabet, not pictogram. It represents the sound, not the concept or object. But the rest of the scholars, the norm of the day before Young and Champollion was they wrongly thought hieroglyph was a pictogram, right? So it's asking that. So it's a very good question, I feel, right? Let's look at the answer choice. Young and Champollion had access to large collection of hieroglyphic writing, whereas other scholars didn't get this large collection of hieroglyphic writing. Come on, guys. Not at all. Not mentioned. Okay, it's not an imagination test. It's a language test. Young and Champollion both guessed that hieroglyphs were symbols for sounds, not object or concept. %100% right. Very good, clean, clear, good quality, important. Last question with the direct and perfect answer. All right. So this is factual question, of course. Nothing hard about it. Young and Champollion both spoke Greek and Coptic. The professor says Champollion were fluent in Coptic, but it doesn't say Thomas Young knew Coptic or not, so we don't know. Both Young and Champollier shared their research with one another. Is there information like this? No, just like A, D is a total nonsense because it's not mentioned at all. Just to reconfirm where you can get that answer from the note-taking, I'll revisit one last time. So Thomas Young recognized hieroglyphs represent the sound. It was phonetic, not pictogram, right? And also Champollier got it just like Thomas Young. And then also it says one more time in its last sentence of the passage. Okay? Champollier confirmed hieroglyph was phonetic. It represents the sound. Boom. How do you like it? Perfect. Okay? So 6 questions down. Every question right, of course. And I hope you liked my explanation. And most importantly, you understood everything I said. Okay? Cool. That's it, guys. So that's another lecture passage. TOEFL listening done and dusted. And I hope you liked it and enjoyed the video. And I'll see you again in my next video. Thank you, guys.